What would you do if you found a family heirloom that revealed a life-altering secret? Share your story. The church sat heavy under an ashen sky, framed by twisted branches that scratched at the gray facade like accusing fingers. Emma stood at the back, shoulders hunched beneath an oversized, faded sweater. Her red hair, loosely gathered in a bun, caught stray gusts of a cold wind swirling through cracked stained glass windows. The scent of damp wood and old candle wax was thick in the air, mixing with murmured prayers and soft sobs. A sliver of pale winter light splayed over the pews like faith barely hanging on. Emma's heart pounded in uneven thuds, mismatched to the solemn cadence of quiet hymns. Her eyes fixed on the front where her mother lay wrapped in fragile silk, pale and still. The world seemed to tilt, heavy with the weight of absence and a sea of expectations she had never quite met. Near the altar, her aunt's voice cut through the solemn hush sharp, clipped. "I never understood why you chose this path," the voice said, calm but cold, reverberating against the oak beams. "Running off to chase dreams instead of settling, making something of yourself." Emma's lips pressed into a thin line. A rustle of stiff cloths and faint clearing of throats rippled around her. Heads turned slightly. Eyes flicked over her with a mix of pity and thinly veiled judgment. "It's a scandal how much this family has had to carry because of your choices," the aunt continued, eyes blazing beneath carefully arched brows. "Your mother deserved better." A brittle silence followed, heavier than the grief hanging thick in the air. Emma's fingers clenched into fists at her sides, the rough fibers of her sweater biting into her palms, warmth and pain mingling in a private storm. Her gaze dropped to a faded envelope clutched nervously in one hand, the handwriting inside unmistakably her mother's. The gathering shifted uneasily, the soft shuffle of feet and a hesitant cough breaking the charged stillness. Emma lifted her chin, voice almost a whisper, tentative but charged. "I loved her. I wanted her to be proud." Her aunt's eyes narrowed, skeptical, but no reply came. Instead, the family patriarch stepped forward, clearing his throat with a formal authority that felt like final judgment. "We must honor her memory by putting aside differences," he intoned, eyes flicking to Emma as if weighing her worth. "The estate is to be handled with responsibility, not sentiment." Those words hung in the cold air, a quiet dismissal, a subtle blockade. Emma felt the sting of rejection spread like frost beneath her ribs. This was not a home of warmth or welcome. The subtle chill of alienation wrapped around her, tightening. Outside, the sky grumbled low as a sudden gust sent brittle leaves tumbling. Through the aging church windows, a distant crack of thunder echoed, a somber drumbeat against her swelling doubts. Her eyes drifted to the necklacean intricate locket resting against her chest beneath the fabricet's delicate filigree gleaming faintly, an heirloom heavy with unspoken stories. The soft creak of the heavy wooden door startled her eyes upward. The service was ending, whispers rising like fragile smoke. Emma took a slow breath, shoulders stiffening as she stepped forward into the cool, uncertain light filtering through the church entrance. Her steps were tentative, carrying the burden of loss, rejection, and a fragile hope tangled in shadows yet to be revealed. The ocean murmured low, its restless breath carrying salted sorrow into the sky, darkening with the gathering dusk. Emma sat alone on a jagged outcrop, skirt pooling about her boots like quiet shadows in the fading light. The ache in her chest was a weight pressing her down, pinning her beneath the expanse of an unforgiving sky. Behind her, the tidy Victorian town lay muted, distant, a backdrop to the tempest swelling inside her. The wind teased strands of her red hair loose from the messy bun, tangling and twisting with a life of its own, a wild thing unmoored by grief and estrangement. Her breaths came shallow, uneven, the cold seeping through the oversized sweater wrapped tightly like a fragile shield. She closed her eyes, each inhale tasting like salt and unshed tears, mingling with whispered echoes of dismissive words spoken too easily back at the funeral. The memory of her aunt's cutting voice scratched at the edge of her mind, each syllable a blade sharper than the last. You never fit in this family. Your choices only deepen the divide. Emma's fingers curled against the jagged stones beneath her, grounding herself in the rough earth even as doubt threatened to swallow her whole. Who was she, really? A failed writer, a disappointment, a child cast out by kin she barely understood. Yet somewhere beyond the crashing waves, past the raw sting of rejection, a faint pulse stirred an ember of something unyielding. Her gaze drifted to the creek that spiraled through the coastal woods below, its waters winding around ancient roots, relentless, patient. The creek did not rush or falter. It moved forward, carving paths unseen, reshaping the landscape with quiet determination. Flowing onward, no matter the obstacle. Emma reached for the delicate necklace nestled beneath her sweater, the intricate locket cold against her skin. Fingers traced the silent curves of its delicate filigree, a tether to memories both known and elusive. The locket had once belonged to her mother, a keeper of secrets long buried beneath layers of whispered family tales and veiled glances. She pressed the locket closer, a small act of rebellion against the storm of doubt raging within. Maybe, she whispered, voice barely audible over the ocean's sigh, there's more to this story. The sharp cry of a gull broke through the twilight's hush, slicing the air with wild hope. Emma exhaled slowly, the stiffness in her arms loosening. The tangled strands of her hair caught the last glow of amber light, flickering like flames against the darkening sky. Silent and steady, she rose, boots crunching against sea-smoothed stones. The wind carried the salt tang of the sea, of beginnings and endings mingled as one. She turned inland toward the looming silhouette of the Victorian home, a fortress of secrets and dust, waiting to reveal what truth might still be unearthed. The path ahead was uncertain, shadowed by the past yet alive with a fragile spark. With one last glance toward the ever-flowing creek, Emma stepped forward, the tender weight of the locket a quiet promise nestled against her heart. The tide of change had started to pull, relentless and sure. And somewhere beneath the gathering stars, the story was only just beginning. The night settled over the old Victorian house like a heavy silk shroud, soft yet suffocating. Inside, the dim glow of a solitary lamp barely pushed back shadows pooling in the corners of the cavernous hallway. Emma moved through the familiar yet foreign space, the wooden floor creaking beneath her boots, each groan a muted echo of her own restless thoughts. The scent of aged paper and faint perfume lingered in the air, a fragile tribute to a life now absent. She paused at the foot of the grand staircase, eyes drawn to the patterns of moonlight filtering through lace curtains, tracing silver ribbons that danced across peeling wallpaper and dust-laced air. Her fingers lingered on the delicate necklace hidden beneath her sweater, its intricate locket warm against her skin, anchoring her to memories both tender and elusive. The tangled history of the family, whispered at the funeral and clinging between worn walls, pressed against her soul, begging for revelation. On the hallway table lay a small, weathered box she had not noticed before. Its wood was bleached by time, edges softened by countless hands. The lock was an old-fashioned clasp, tarnished but intact. Emma's breath caught as she reached to lift the lid, fingers trembling. Inside lay a small, rusted iron key, nestled against faded velvet. It was unassuming, almost overlooked, yet her pulse quickened. The key, like the necklace, was a tangible fragment of forgotten secrets. She held the key gingerly, the cold metal a stark contrast to the comforting warmth of the locket. The house seemed to breathe around her, creaking floors whispered ancient confidences. The wind sighed in the wild branches outside, a mournful chorus weaving through the open windows. Emma's eyes swept the room, suddenly seeing the familiar in sharp new focus. The worn bookshelves bowed under the weight of dusty tomes, faded photographs frozen in sepia tones, and the attic staircase tucked away behind a heavy curtain of threadbare drapes. A whisper of possibility trembled in the air, the unspoken promise of discovery. Her gaze drifted back to the necklace, fingers entwining the locket's delicate clasp before slipping the key inside, a perfect, almost predestined fit. A soft metallic click sang through the quiet, a startling note amid the stillness. The key, so small and unassuming, was suddenly a beacon, a symbol of unlocked truths and paths unseen. The moonlight shifted, spilling down the staircase in pools of ethereal light. Emma's heart lifted with it, a fragile flicker of determination kindling from the ashes of pain. The journey ahead was uncertain, shrouded in mystery and shadowed by family legacies both beautiful and burdened. Yet, beneath the weight of her fears and doubts, a quiet strength began to rush on, untamed current pulling her toward the attic's dusty secrets, toward unearthing the past her mother had left behind. With the key clasped tightly in her palm and the locket resting close to her heart, Emma took a slow, steady breath. The creek's distant murmur reached her ears, a gentle reminder of time's flow and the inevitable changes it brought. Her feet moved forward, soft but resolute, carrying her toward the staircase that led to forgotten rooms and buried truths. The house, once a silent witness to her family's story, was about to become the stage for her own transformation. And somewhere between those shadowed, dust-laden rafters, the first secrets began to stir. The velvet dusk deepened over the Victorian-styled family home, its ornate gables and weathered shingles silhouetted against the fading blueness of the coastal twilight. The sprawling mansion sat ensnared by wild ivy and towering oaks, their untamed branches scratching at mullioned windows like silent sentinels guarding long-forgotten memories. Inside, Emma moved slowly, her footsteps softened by the threadbare rug that ran a meandering path through the dimly lit hallway. Faint smells of cedar, paper, and faint lavender mingled with the dampness that clung to the thick walls. Her fingers trailed along cracked wallpaper as she wandered toward the staircase, the soft creak of the old wood echoing through the quiet rooms like distant whispers. The key she had discovered lay heavy in her pocket, a silent invitation and a weight pressing on the edges of her curiosity and fear. In the attic stairwell, exacerbated dust swirled in lazy spirals as light from an oil lamp struggled to illuminate forgotten relics and discarded furniture draped in ghostly sheets. The air hung still, thick with the stories of generations woven into the very grain of the floorboards. Emma pulled the key from its hiding place and, with tentative fingers, inserted it into an ancient chest tucked away beneath an attic eave. The lock gave way with a reluctant clunk, releasing years of silence and revealing a trove of letters, journals, and fragile photographs, each echoing with the warmth and pain of lives lived in the shadow of unspoken secrets. She clutched a journal bound in cracked leather, its pages yellowed and fragrant with cedar smoke and ink. As she turned the pages, her mother's voice surfaced in delicate script stories of childhood joys, whispered fears, and confessions cloaked in metaphor. Emma's heart clenched with each word, finding solace and kinship in the woman she thought she knew but had only glimpsed through fractured memories. Outside, the ocean's distant roar threaded through the broken panes, a timeless hymn to change and endurance. The wind fluttered the edges of a loose curtain, casting shadows that danced against the walls like ancient spirits joining in the awakening. Emma hesitated, then whispered to the quiet air, "Mom, why didn't you tell me? What have I been missing all this time?" The attic seemed to answer with silence etched thick as the dust underfoot, a silence that held both comfort and challenge. Encouraged, Emma sifted through more papers, finding a letter penned in a different, more guarded hand, her mother's writing but with cryptic seals and guarded phrases hinting at tangled loyalties and veiled truths. The letter detailed a hidden part of the estate, a garden long kept secret, sheltering not only rare blooms but whispers of alliances and betrayals buried beneath generations. Shadows deepened as twilight yielded to the navy blues of night. Emma's breath caught as a soft creaking sound drifted down the attic stairs, distant but insistent, a reminder that the house was alive, its every groan a keeper of its own story. Clutching her mother's journal to her chest, Emma descended into the chill heart of the mansion. With each step, her resolve strengthened, the fragile thread of discovery weaving courage through the tapestry of doubt and pain. Her journey had only begun, the hidden past unraveling one careful piece at a time, propelling her forward into the murky depths of family secrets and her own fragile hope. Outside, the creek murmured endlessly, its relentless flow promising that, like water shaping rock, time and persistence could carve new paths where none seemed possible. Emma paused at a window, eyes tracing the restless water, his path through tangled reeds and moonlit shadows. The night was long and uncertain, but she held tightly to the flickering light within herself, ready to confront whatever truths awaited beyond the fragile veil of silence. The brittle autumn wind rasped through the skeletal branches of the old oaks surrounding the family estate, stirring fallen leaves along the cracked stone pathways. Emma shivered in her oversized sweater, the threads fraying at the cuff as she held a fragile letter close to her chest. Its edges were worn, ink faded by time and tears alike. The house, grand yet imposing with its faded Victorian charm, seemed to watch her with an unyielding gaze, as though harboring silent judgments of its own. Inside, Emma faced her aunt in the dim light of the drawing room. The heavy velvet curtains blocked the fading sun, draping the room in shadows more profound than the encroaching night. The scent of lavender and old paper hung thick, mingling with the tension that simmered between them. Her aunt's eyes, sharp and guarded, flicked over the collection of letters and journals Emma had quietly amassed. "These scraps of your mother's past. What good will dredging them up do?" she said, voice low and calculating. "Some things are better left buried." Emma's fingers tightened around the letter. "I need to understand," she replied, her voice steady despite the storm building within. "There are pieces missing from the story I inherited, secrets behind the life she lived and the choices she made." A flicker of something resentment, fear crossed her aunt's face. "You chase shadows," she said, standing with deliberate grace. "But this isn't your fight. The estate, our family, we protect what matters. Your mother chose her path. You must choose yours." The words struck bruises in Emma's chest. But beneath the weight of rejection ignited a spark of defiance. She had come too far, lost too much, to turn back now. Late that night, in the attic's muted glow, Emma pored over her mother's journals once more. The faint creak of the grandfather clock downstairs was a metronome to her racing thoughts. Each page unveiled new contradictions, whispered secrets, and veiled references to people who existed just beyond reach. The house seemed to hold its breath, as if the attic itself was a guardian of truths, reluctant but inevitable. A slip of paper fell from between the pages, a folded note, edges inked with a shaky hand. Emma unfolded it cautiously, eyes widening as a name trembled into focus. The note hinted at a sibling she'd never known, a hidden thread in the family's tangled tapestry. Her heart pounded, a mixture of hope and fear flooding through her. The creek's gentle babble outside seemed to swell, its waters relentless yet serene, carrying whispered promises of change and revelation. But with the dawn came a heavier shadow. A whispered conversation caught in the hallway, a warning veiled in familial expectation and veiled threats, a reminder that not everyone would welcome the truth's unveiling. Emma retreated once more into the fragile sanctuary of her mother's attic haven, the note trembling in her grasp like a fragile lifeline. With each breath, the attic's dusty embrace seemed less like confinement and more like a crucible forging her anew. Then, beyond the yellowed glass window, a darkened figure watched from the edge of the garden, silent, unseen by Emma but present, a looming enigma in the unfolding drama. The house held its secrets close, but the current beneath its weathered walls was shifting. The tides were turning, and Emma stood at their forecast between the comfort of the past and the uncertainty of what lay beyond. The attic was a cathedral of forgotten time, where dust motes floated like spectral dancers in the soft, waning light filtering through stained panes. Emma's breath caught in her throat as she traced trembling fingers over the faded leather binding of an unassuming box. Beside it lay letters held together with a fragile ribbon, brittle as the trust she once had within her fractured family. Her heart pounded as the air grew dense with unspoken histories. She unfolded a crisp, folded sheet, a letter written in a careful, unfamiliar hand. Her eyes scanned the elegantly scripted words, the shadows of hushed secrets revealing themselves with every line. It spoke of a hidden truth she had never imagined, a sibling, unknown, hidden away by choices made long ago. The room seemed to tilt. The soft creaking of the floorboards and the distant rush of the nearby creek melded into a symphony of realization and dread. The locket against her chest felt suddenly heavier, as though harboring its own knowing, tightening around the necklace's secret. Memories of whispered conversations, veiled warnings, and her aunt's icy scrutiny rushed through her mind like fog rolling over the water, a web woven tightly, meant to keep certain truths forever in shadow. A soft scuff from the darkened stairwell startled her. Instinctively, she pressed the letter to her chest, the fragile paper whispering promises and threats all at once. The faint glow of a flashlight beam sliced through the gloom, revealing her aunt's poised silhouette framed in the doorway. "You shouldn't be here," came the low voice, laced with a brittle edge. Emma's eyes met her aunt's, a silent battle raging between years of suppression and the fierce need to know. "Why keep this from me? Why hide part of our family?" Her voice trembled, frail yet unwavering. Her aunt's gaze faltered, shadows deepening across her features. "Some things are better left buried," she whispered, the weight of unspoken regrets heavy in her eyes. The fragile alliance between past and present shattered in that moment, the consequences rippling outwards like the turning of the tide. Emma's resolve hardened. She knew the path now stretched in two directions, one that led deeper into betrayal and isolation, and another that beckoned toward raw truth, fraught but necessary. The delicate balance shattered further as the silence was broken by the soft rustle of another paper, another letter, more damning, hinting at deception that reached beyond her mother, implicating threads of the family she had not dared to unravel. Tears pricked at the corners of her eyes, anger seethed under the surface. Yet beneath the pain was a spark of fiercely kindled ember that promised transformation. The creek's steady murmur drifted upwards, a serene counterpoint to the storm raging within. Like its waters carving through the stubborn earth, Emma vowed to forge her own way, uncovering mysteries, confronting pain, and, ultimately, seeking the redemption that had always seemed just beyond reach. As the daylight faded and seeped into shadow, Emma clutched the letter and the necklace close, feeling the weight of legacy and the fragile promise of new beginnings. Unseen by her, a folded note slipped from between the pages, its message hidden but poised to unravel everything Emma thought she knew. The secrets of the attic were awakening, and with them, the fragile threads of a story that would soon challenge the very foundation of her world. The gray sky pressed low over the Victorian estate, heavy with impending rain and unshed grief. Emma sat curled in a cold corner of the attic, surrounded by shadows woven with dust and the ghosts of forgotten stories. The ceiling above, streaked with age and neglect, felt as fragile as her fraying resolve. Each breath was shallow, a delicate thread tethering her to this moment of unraveling. Outside, the wind stirred restless leaves, rattling against ancient panes where moonlight seeped through cracked glass, casting fractured patterns of silver and shadow. The distant ocean murmured a ceaseless, mournful hymn that echoed the emptiness swelling inside her. The creak of floorboards, once a familiar comfort, now sounded like the groan of a world collapsing. Emma's fingers grazed the blood-stained bandage wrapped loosely around her wrist, its cool fabric a stark reminder of loss and trust shattered beyond repair. The locket nestled close, cold and weightless despite its emotional heft. Her eyes fell on the scattered letters and journals strewn across the attic floor, once vessels of hope and discovery, now symbols of the rift widening irreparably within her family. The revelation of an unknown sibling, once a beacon of connection, had ignited a firestorm of suspicion and denial. Voices echoed faintly from the rooms below, her aunt's clipped commands, her cousin's whispered tensions, an unyielding barrier closing in. Emma felt adrift, alienated in the very home she had longed to reclaim. The walls, once protective, now seemed to close in, pressing down with the weight of unspoken accusations. The bitter taste of betrayal lingered on her tongue as tears blazed trails down cold cheeks. "How much more must break before something mends?" she murmured, voice hollow yet raw. Her solitude was punctuated only by the rhythmic drip of rain seeping through the aging roof, each drop a crystalline punctuation to her spiraling thoughts. The creek nearby, once a symbol of gentle time and change, now seemed indifferent, its waters whispering secrets that felt cruel in their distance. Emma's gaze drifted upward to the slanted attic window where a solitary, frail star pierced the night. She reached out, fingertips brushing the cold glass, yearning for connection beyond this suffocating isolation. A sudden gust rattled the window frame, sending a cascade of dust motes into a swirling dance. The attic's musty air thickened, as if holding its breath alongside Hera's fragile pause before the inexorable spiral downward. In that suffocating silence, the fragile shards of Emma's identity trembled, threatening to fracture irretrievably. The truth she sought had become a labyrinth of shadows, leaving her stranded on the edge of a dark abyss. And as thunder groaned distantly, the storm inside her regained unseen, unyielding, and near breaking. The dusk had surrendered fully to night, swallowing the coastal town in a thick cloak of silence and shadow. Emma sat alone in the attic, the faint glow of a single candle trembling against the encroaching darkness. Her fire-warmed face was pale and drawn, framed by her loose red hair that fell messily around her shoulders. The heavy drapes swayed softly in the cold breeze drifting through a cracked window, carrying salty whispers of the restless sea below. The attic's oppressive stillness pressed down on her like a physical weight, every creak of ancient wood a mournful echo of fading hope. The dust particles, illuminated by the wavering flame, drifted aimlessly, a muted dance of things lost to time. The scattered papers littering the floor, worn letters and faded photographs, bore testament to her desperate search for truth, yet each fragment seemed to deepen the chasm of uncertainty swallowing her whole. She clutched a folded letter close to her chest, the edges worn frayed from trembling fingers. Its words had crushed more than just hopes, they had frayed the delicate thread of her identity. The revelation she had once grasped with fierce determination of a hidden sibling now unraveled like brittle fabric, tainted by contradictory evidence and whispers of deceit. Emma's breath came in shallow waves, unsteady as the candle flickered dangerously low. Behind her, the walls seemed to lean inward, steeped in shadows thick with judgment and rejection. The necklace with the intricate locket clung to her throat, its cold weight a bitter reminder of promises broken and connections severed. Her whispered voice was nearly lost to silence. Who am I, really? The distant crash of ocean waves merged with the creaking floor beneath her, unforgiving rhythms that underscored the vast emptiness engulfing her spirit. The creek's gentle murmur, once a lullaby of hope and persistence, was now only a haunting refrain in the night's chill. Tears blurred her vision as she rose unsteadily and drifted toward the attic window. Her reflection was fractured by the cracked glass, a ghost of the woman she had hoped to become, shattered and distant. Outside, the moon hung low, veiled partially by restless clouds. Behind their dance, a star pulsed faintly, a solitary beacon in the vast void, mirroring the fragile flicker of Emma's courage sputtering against the tide of despair. Her hands trembled as she reached out toward the glass, fingertips grazing the cold surface. The chill seeped deep into her bones, the boundary between her and the night blurring, fragile as a breath held too long. A sudden gust rattled the pane violently, sending a shiver through the house and a rush of dust swirling in the candlelight. Emma blinked, a whispered breath caught in her throat as the fragile flame wavered, threatening to flicker out. For a long moment, she stood motionless, the weight of silence tightening. Then, the candle steadied. And in the darkest hour, beneath the watchful gaze of the restless sea and the ancient stars, Emma's resolve began to fracture. The thread of light that had led her through shadow wavered beneath the crushing pall of loss. Her whispered surrender was a breath, fading into the heavy night. The attic held its breath with her. The attic was bathed in the fragile glow of early dawn, soft light creeping through the dust-speckled air, casting long shadows that stretched across faded wallpaper and tattered belongings. Emma sat amidst the scattered remnants of her family's history, the weight of betrayal and loss pressed deep into the silence around her. Her hands trembled slightly as they cradled a small, weathered photograph yellowed with age, its edges frayed, yet still vibrant in the stories it held. The image was a window to a forgotten time, a youthful version of her mother, laughing beneath the same sprawling oak that shadowed the estate's garden. Beside her, a small child whose face bore striking resemblance not to Emma, but to someone she had never met, a sibling she had only come to suspect in whispers and coded letters. A breath caught in Emma's throat, the ache of years of doubt and isolation coalescing into a fragile pulse of hope. The necklace around her neck, the intricate locket nearly hidden under her sweater, seemed to warm against her skin, as if acknowledging the awakening within her heart. Outside, the creek's gentle murmur threaded through the quiet, a timeless lullaby that had seen generations ebb and flow like the tides beyond the cliffs. Its steady current promised that even in the bleakest moments, life persisted, shaping, healing, enduring. A quiet sigh escaped Emma's lips as she traced the contours of the photograph, memories mingling with dreams. The room felt heavier, yet lighter somehow, as if the weight of silence was lifting, making room for new truths and the fragile stirrings of belonging. She lifted her gaze to the attic's dim window, where the first rays of sunlight fractured the gloom, scattering shards of gold across the floorboards. The familiar creaking of settling wood joined the symphony of awakening, the house itself seeming to breathe with renewed purpose. Emma's voice was barely a whisper. "Maybe it's not too late." The locket swung gently at her collarbone, catching the light and revealing a tiny, almost imperceptible keyhole, a secret nested within secrets, waiting to be unlocked. With a newfound steadiness, she rose from the floor, the photograph clutched close, the necklace a tangible link to the past and a beacon toward the future. The path ahead was uncertain, shadowed by unanswered questions and fragile trust. Yet in this quiet dawn, Emma felt the stirrings of resilience, a quiet declaration that she would face the secrets to come no longer as a lost daughter, but as a woman ready to reclaim her story. The attic settled around her, shadows retreating before the growing light. And somewhere beneath the layered dust and whispered echoes, the promise of transformation began to bloom. A pale sunrise spilled reluctantly through the thick, fogged windows of the old Victorian mansion, illuminating motes of dust that danced in the cool morning air. The house, once weighed down by silence and secrets, seemed to breathe slowly, as though awakening from a long, suffocating slumber. Emma stood near the window of the attic, her eyes tracing the muted hues of dawn spilling across the sprawling grounds, greens heavy with dew, the creek winding steadily, a silver thread weaving through the untamed wilderness. Her hands rested lightly on the ancient wooden windowsill, fingertips brushing away years of grime as her gaze lifted to the soft light that promised change. The heavy shadows that had once filled this forgotten space were retreating, replaced by warm amber and gold, the color of brittle hope rekindled. In her lap lay the brittle photograph, the childhood image of her mother and the mysterious child pressed gently between fingers stained with memory and resolve. The image no longer felt like a relic of despair but a tether to something vital, a spark of connection anchored deep beneath the layers of distrust and isolation. The necklace with its intricate locket caught a stray sunbeam, refracting a prism of light that cast dancing patterns across the fragile journal pages spread before her. The room, once an oppressive vault of history and half-truths, was bathed in quiet magic, the air thick with the scent of old paper and distant sea mist. Emma's breath came steady but soft, the weight of the past momentarily lifting. A faint sound stirred beyond the attic stairs, the creak of footsteps, hesitant yet deliberate, a sign that the house was no longer a fortress of solitude but a shared space where truths might be confronted and, perhaps, forgiven. Her voice, barely above a whisper, broke the silence. "Maybe this time, I can find the answers without losing myself." Beyond the heavy oak door, the quiet murmur of the creek threaded through the morning stillness, a ceaseless reminder that time and change flowed onward, carrying with them the promise of renewal. In that delicate dawn, Emma felt the first fragile tendrils of courage stirring within her, fragile but fierce. The journey through shadows was far from over, yet for the first time in months, she sensed that the light ahead, though faint, was unmistakable. The attic, shrouded in ancient secrets and soft illumination, held its breath along with her. And, at last, the story was beginning anew. The family home was suffused with a brittle stillness that carried the weight of years too long silenced. Emma stood in the parlor, clutching a stack of faded letters tightly in one hand, her knuckles pale from the grip. The air inside was thick with the scent of aged wood and old secrets, mingling uneasily with the faint trace of perfumer mother's signature essence. Outside, a rare burst of sunlight pierced the gathering gloom, casting luminous patterns through the stained glass windows and splattering uneven colors upon the cracked floorboards. The contrast was stark, the warm glow of a new day battling the cold shadows where deception had long lurked. Her aunt entered deliberately, the taut lines of her face betraying the years of concealment beneath a practiced veneer of control. The room seemed to shrink with their tension, voices low yet sharp as knives unsheathed. "You brought these," her aunt began, voice cold but quivering beneath the surface, "to stir trouble where there should be none." Emma inhaled, steadying herself. "These are truths," she said clearly, woven through years of silence. "My mother's words, not mine. And evidence hidden, but undeniable." She laid the letters before her aunt, the fragile pages trembling slightly, each fold and crease remembering the touch of a distant past. As the older woman rifled through them, her composure fractured in slow, painful increments. The once formidable facade softened, revealing traces of regret and buried sorrow. A late afternoon breeze stirred the curtains, bringing with it the distant sound of the creek's ceaseless flow, a reminder of time's relentless passage and the possibility of renewal. Emma's gaze flickered to the window, the interplay of shadow and sunlight marking the room in gentle intervals, hope wrapped in the familiar. Her aunt's voice broke the silence, barely above a whisper. "Your mother. She carried secrets heavier than any of us knew." The admission hung suspended, a fragile bridge arching toward reconciliation. Emma nodded, sensing the fragile yet profound shift beneath the harsh lines of confrontation. "I only want to understand," Emma said softly, "to find where I belong in the story she left behind, and to embrace the truth, no matter its shape." Tears glistened in her aunt's eyes, a rare vulnerability unveiled. The coldness that had defined their relationship thawed, replaced by a tentative guardianship born from shared pain. As twilight crept closer, the house seemed to breathe anew, shadows retreating in the wake of confessions long overdue. Emma felt the weight that had bowed her shoulders lighten, the path forward still uncertain but alive with possibility. Later, in the dim glow of the attic, Emma cradled the locket close, the waning light playing across its delicate surface, whispering promises of healing and connection. The shadows there deepened and softened in turn, mirroring the fragile balance of truth and forgiveness now settling. Outside, the creek's melody continued a steady pulse amid the fragile quiet, a symbol of enduring change and the unbreakable flow of life. Emma's breath steadied, her heart slowly opening to the strength blooming within. And in the fractured light of the fading day, new stories began to untangle, weaving together the fractured pieces of a family reclaiming itself from the ashes of silence. The late afternoon sun spilled over the crest of the hill, flooding the grounds of the Victorian estate with a radiant golden light as if the very heavens conspired to illuminate the truth finally laid bare. Emma stood on the veranda, her figure poised and steady against the soft breeze that stirred the wild grasses and wildflowers, once tangled and neglected now dusted in light and life. Behind her, the house breathed quiet and still, shadows retreating in the glow, the creaking floorboards and old wooden beams transformed from oppressors into venerable witnesses. The air was thick with the scent of fresh earth and salt from the nearby creek, that ceaseless carrier of time and change. Her fingers traced the delicate contours of the necklace's locket resting gently against her chest, its intricate filigree catching the sun's rays with a brilliance that echoed the fire kindled within her. Once a silent symbol of hidden depths and secrets, The locket now represented survival, strength, and reclamation. Emma's lips parted in a quiet, resolute breath. The battles fought both in shadowed corridors and within the tangled webs of family had forged her anew. She carried not just the weight of lineage but the clarity of purpose that flowing truths bring. The distant murmur of the creek was a steady counterpoint to her steady heartbeat, each pulse a drumbeat of conviction. Nearby, a faded family portrait hung on the veranda wall, its weathered surface now suffused with a newfound warmth, the faces familiar but illuminated in a way that whispered forgiveness and unity. As the dust motes danced in the golden afternoon, Emma's gaze lifted to the horizon where sky met sea vast, open, uncharted. The road ahead was uncertain, strewn with challenges yet to come, but beneath her feet lay roots tangled deep, nourishing a quiet confidence. Her voice, steady and rich with the gravity of earned wisdom, broke the serene silence. Truth is not a tombstone, but a lantern. Behind the whisper, the faint sound of footsteps approached. Family, once distant, now gathering a tentative community forged through the crucible of shared pain and revelation. Their faces were tight with relief and cautious hope, their hesitations beginning to soften in the presence of honest light. Emma met their eyes, no longer a wounded girl but a woman transformed, standing firm in the lineage she had reclaimed. We are more than secrets and silence. We are the sum of all we choose to be. A gentle breeze swept through the garden, carrying with it the laughter now rising, lilting and tentative, folding into the symphony of renewed beginnings. The creek's steady flow mirrored their collective journey, ever moving, reshaping, healing. In that luminous moment, time seemed suspended, the oppressive weights of mistrust and fear lifted, replaced by something fragile yet unbreakable. Emma's gaze softened, resting on the delicate locket one last time before cherishing it close to her heart. The sun caught its intricate clasp, a sparkle that spoke of secrets unlocked and the dawn of peace. The house, the creek, the heirlooms all held their breath in reverent stillness as Emma, poised at the threshold of a new chapter, looked outward with eyes unclouded. Ready. Whole. The first light of dawn spilled softly through the attic window, casting a warm, golden glow over the remnants of Emma's journey. The room, once shadowed by secrets and sorrow, now shimmered with quiet clarity. She stood gently, her fingertips grazing the surface of the delicate family necklace, the intricate locket catching the sunlight like a small star nestled against her chest. It was a silent testament to the truth finally unveiled and accepted. Below, the house was still, tranquil as a breath held in anticipation. The creaking floors and distant ocean waves whispered a lullaby of healing, of time's gentle flow washing away the harshness of betrayal. Outside, the garden was awakening, dewladen petals unfurling silently, eager to greet the new day. Emma moved slowly, her steps unhurried, as if to savor the moment, each movement deliberate, each breath an act of both reverence and release. Her reflection danced in the cracked mirror, her eyes, once clouded with doubt, now softened with understanding. The scars she carried, visible and invisible, seemed to shimmer with a gentle acceptance, anchors of endurance and resilience. She knelt by the old trunk where she had finally placed the necklace. Her trembling fingers worked with reverence, securing it carefully among her mother's photographs, images of love, hope, and quiet strength. The snapshot of her mother's gentle smile now sat beside the necklace, a luminous echo of a life that had longed for recognition. Her hand lingered on the photograph, her gaze tender yet unafraid. It was a portrait of warmth before the days of shadows, before the silence. A simple yet profound reminder that love had always been there, waiting patiently for her to see it again. The room felt alive with a newfound harmony, a harmony woven from pain and forgiveness, loss and renewal. Emma closed her eyes briefly, allowing the stillness to settle deep within her, a gentle reminder that her story was still unfolding, richer and more full of hope than ever before. Outside, the creek gurgled softly in eternal flow, embodying the passage of time and the promise of transformation. It whispered a lullaby of continuity, of roots grounded firmly in the earth, reaching towards the future. A faint breeze brushed her cheek, carrying the scent of the sea and the promise of peace. Emma took a step toward the attic door, her figure calm, steady, a testament to the journey she had traveled and the quiet strength she now carried. She paused, one hand on the doorway, her gaze lifting upward toward the horizon where new stories awaited. The sun continued to rise, casting a gentle light over the house, illuminating her path forward. The attic door swung open slowly, revealing the room bathed in soft, golden light, an inward and outward journey converging at last. Emma's face softened into a faint, knowing smile, embodying a peace hard-won and a hope reborn, a quiet dawn of a new chapter. The golden light of dawn streamed softly through the attic window, casting a warm, forgiving glow over Emma as she stood amidst the relics of her long journey. The room, once shadowed by secrets and burdens, now shimmered with clarity and peace. Her hands gently rested on the surface of her mother's favorite photo, the image of a woman radiating love and quiet strength, the heart of the house and of Emma's reborn understanding. The necklace, now securely clasped around her neck, was more than an heirloom. It was a tether to love, truth, and new beginnings, a symbol of her resilience and her acceptance of her roots. Her fingertips traced the delicate locket, feeling the intricate craftsmanship as if it were a heartbeat expressing the enduring connection that had survived generations. Outside, the creek glided lazily, its waters no longer symbolic only of change and time, but also of healing, a gentle reminder that flow and forgiveness are intertwined. The sounds of distant ocean waves merged with the soft rustle of leaves, crafting a symphony of renewal that serenaded Emma's spirit. She paused, deep breaths stabilizing the storm of emotions within her. Her gaze lifted, meeting the sunlight that bathed the attic space in a tender glow, a quiet rebirth that transcended pain. Her eyes shimmered with unshed tears, not of regret, but of a profound recognition. This was her home, her story, her truth. Raising her hand, Emma softly touched the necklace, as if to reassure herself that she was finally whole, finally free. The room's silence held a sacred weight, each moment pregnant with the promise of reconciliation and the acceptance of all that had come before. In that stillness, she realized that her journey wasn't merely about uncovering family secrets but about reclaiming herself, the woman who had faced darkness and emerged luminous. As she carefully placed her mother's photograph back alongside the necklace, the rays of dawn spilled through the attic window, illuminating the space in pure, golden light, signifying not just peace, but a dawn of hope and continuity. With a quiet smile, Emma stepped away from the relics of her past, each movement deliberate, each breath a sacred act of forgiveness and new beginnings. The house, the creek, and her very heart echoed with the gentle promise that she was finally home and her story, at last, was truly her own. The attic was bathed in the gentle glow of the afternoon sun, streaming through a small, unassuming window and illuminating the dust motes swirling softly in the still air. Emma stood amidst the quiet sanctuary, her gaze fixed on the family photograph she carefully placed beside the treasured necklace. It was a picture of her mother in an unguarded moment, her smile radiant, eyes filled with love that had once seemed unreachable, now apparent in its fullness. The necklace, with its intricate carvings, lay resting in her palms, a symbol of secrets finally laid bare. Her fingers traced the delicate filigree, feeling the warmth of a hidden connection long concealed beneath layers of silence and societal silence. She tilted her head, breathing in the quiet, the scent of aged wood and faint salt in the air, a reminder of the tide's eternal rhythm and the unyielding flow of life. Outside, the creek's gentle murmur persisted, timeless, persistent, flowing tirelessly toward horizons unseen. The rhythmic sound became a lullaby, whispering that the past, with all its shadows, had finally settled into the gentle embrace of the present. Emma's eyes drifted closed for a moment, her heart swelling softly with a sense of peace. The long, tumultuous journey, the betrayals, the revelations, the healing had reached a quiet crescendo. She gently lifted the necklace to her neck, securing it with reverence. It was no longer simply an heirloom passing through generations. It was her anchor, her truth, a symbol of love rediscovered and wounds mended. The attic, once a chamber of shadows and mourning, now shimmered with a tender luminescence. Shadows had receded, replaced by the warmth of forgiveness. The walls that once confined her in silence now stood as silent witnesses to her awakening. A soft wind rustled through the open window, stirring the curtains with gentle insistence, as if caressing the room with a blessing. Emma looked around, her gaze lingering on each relic, each a chapter of her story now complete. She took a slow, deliberate step away from the trunk, her posture relaxed, yet resolute. The sunlight caught the edges of her profile, revealing a tranquil, confident smile, an affirmation that peace is born not just from answers but from acceptance. As she turned toward the attic door, a silent promise filled her, promise to carry this newfound truth forward, to write her story on her own terms, grounded in love and authenticity. The door closed softly behind her, the room bathed in the last golden rays of the sun. Outside, the creek continued its eternal journey, undisturbed, flowing toward the vast horizon. The house, once shrouded in secrecy, now stood as a beacon of hope, a quiet sanctuary where love and truth had finally found their home. And amidst the gentle whisper of the wind and the steady flow of the creek, the story settled into its peaceful ending, a timeless moment of healing, silent, enduring, infinite. What would you have done if you found a family secret? Share your thoughts below.